Welcome to Meeples on Meeples, episode 74. I'm Adam.
Andrew.
And I'm Brian.
As usual, before we get into our game of the week this week, we want to invite you over to our website, meeplesonmeeples.com, our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page, Twitter account, Pinterest account. Search any social media site. We probably have a page up there, and subscribe.
This week's game of the week is Codenames, a hugely popular game that came out at some of the game shows this year, or trade shows, I don't know what to call it. And it's sold out. It's sold like gangbusters. I think they're on their third printing already in less than a year. It's hugely popular. So I was like, it's very inexpensive. You can get it for 20 is full MSRP, $20 or less.
Nice.
It's a word game. I'm an English teacher. I love like taboo and word games, so I thought this should be interesting. The way Codenames work is there's a whole plot and story behind it, but basically all of the words, it's a 5x5 grid, and all of the words, each card has one word on it, is supposedly the code name of a secret agent out there, whatever. So one person on the team sits on this side of the table, and they get to look at this grid, and they know who, let's say I'm the blue team and Andrew's the red team, the clue giver. I know that, see, I look at it this way, so this one down here is blue, and this one's blue. Basically, they correspond with one of the squares on our grid here. And I have to get my partners, it can be multiple people, it would be a big party game if you want, to guess who our field agents are so we can say them, get out of whatever the story is. And we alternate taking turns. So for instance, like I said, so according to this grid, and you can turn it in different directions, there's multiple cards, so every game is going to be different, even if you did use the same words, and there's lots of options that are all double-sided. But in this game, according to this grid, I've got comic, poison, eagle, smuggler, time, pipe, America, thief, and Atlantis. When you give a clue, you try to get them to say as many of your color as possible with one word.
And one number.
And one number. So let's say I think I can tie multiples of those to... Wow. Okay, here we go. I could say United States... Oh, no, that's two words. I can't do that.
You could do, let's say...
Because I was thinking America and Eagle.
Or you could do superhero. You got comic and America, like Captain America.
And that's very vague, but you could say superhero 2. So they know that two of these cards out here tie into the word superhero. Now, they can then guess. So let's say they guess comic right away. You say yes. So I would put my blue card on that because they guessed one. And if they're not sure, because that's kind of vague for America, they can say, I don't want to try. If they guess and they're wrong and they pick one of Andrew's people, then no. And then immediately ends your turn and I would cover up with a red one. If they guess there's one assassin out there, if they guess the assassin one, if I'd somehow they'd gotten to litter, the game ends and we lose automatically. First one to get all of their color covered up would win.
And if they guess wrong, there is also, besides the assassin and the other teams...
Some of them we might luck out and like, okay, well, at least you didn't give them a point. It's not one of theirs. It's just a regular civilian. Now,
and that ends your turn as well.
And that would end your turn as well. And then Andrew would go and so you can go a big number. You can try to tie, a word in 4 up to 8 because you usually have 8 cards you're trying to guess. If they didn't get that comic 2, and then they figure it out later, they're like, I know what it is. I can't say anything. I can't say, remember that last clue. But let's say the next turn I give them another clue, and I say 3, and they guess 3, they can go up to 1 extra one.
And you know what? I think I know what you meant on that superhero one.
So I'm going to guess a 4th one just because. So sometimes you want to give them a higher number, if that makes sense. So they might say, guess and then America. But that's basically, you just go until somebody gets all of theirs covered up. The timer is for...
If somebody you think is taking too long, either coming up with a clue or coming up with a guess, you can put them on a 1-minute timer and say, all right, we need to move this along.
Right.
But typically, it moves... It's kind of a party game. You can kind of sit around and talk while the other people are trying to figure out either their clue or their guess. So it's not that big a deal, but if they're really starting to drag...
I've only had it maybe 1 or 2 times out of maybe the 15 times that we've played this where I'm like, okay... Go.
We need to get this going.
Speed this up. You've been staring at the cards for like 10 minutes. Let's.
But it might sound a little complicated. I hope I explained it well. But really, just one word clue followed by a number, and they try to guess as well as they can without screwing it up and helping the other team.
The hardest part about it is when you're the person on this side giving the clues, you have to remember that it's like this. So this one, this one, this one. So when you're giving the clues, you're like, okay, and you look at it and you're like, you give a clue for orange. You'd say fruit, and you're like, whoops, that was theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens occasionally. Yeah.
You know, because you're looking at it and then you get mixed up a little bit. That's, I'd say, the hardest part about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the components. I guess I don't know how many of these cards there is. There's a ton of them, I'm sure.
Many cards, huge piles of cards, and they're all double-sided. So you never play the same. I mean, you can play.
And same with the grid. You got a ton of them. Plus, as Brian said, you can rotate.
Just
the grids.
rotate it. It's a brand new game. Yeah.
They're actually pretty decent quality for cards that you don't touch.
Now, normally, you're a huge fan of miniature cards, Andrew.
I know.
Where are these sleeves?
But I'm going to say, for this game, you could have it's a 5x5 grid. I think big cards would be a detriment for this particular game.
It would take up half this table instead of a quarter of the table. I mean, it'd be too much.
You can play this
cards.
almost anywhere. You could take this to a coffee shop and throw this out, really.
Right. It'd just be too much for, otherwise I hate mini cards.
One thing I also like about the components is the fact that the word is printed both ways. And something I didn't notice the first couple times we're playing. So it's big and white towards the people that are trying to guess, but the person that's giving the clue, the word's also printed facing you in kind of the tan area, so you don't have to try to read it upside down or anything.
I like it. They didn't need to do this. The agents are cardboard, not just card stock, so they're thicker and more heavy duty. But there's a male and a female agent, so there's no sexism happening here.
Opportunity. I mean,
do you want to be stared at by what did you say,
David
Caruso? Or so it's kind of nice that they did that. They didn't have to. It's double-sided, good cardboard.
Not that you're moving. I mean, because you never handle these cards, but I do like that it is. It's going to be a little bit heavier. So when you do set it down, it's not going to accidentally catch a little wind and like slide over to another card or something. I do like that aspect.
The rule book, and again, usually the one who owns it reads the rules and explains to everybody. The rule book is very well written. It's very clear. So I like that also. It's there's nothing left to second guess in that rule book.
Yeah. The art quality is, nice, and the characters, like you said, are double-sided. It's like 2 different characters in each one, which they didn't have to do.
And the male is different for both teams and the female. So that's technically it's 4 different artwork.
And I just noticed this.
Is there male and female for these as well?
Yep.
Yeah, there is.
Absolutely.
I noticed looking at the word cards. No. They actually, as you said, they're supposed to be a secret identity. They actually look like kind of a little ID card. They got a kind of a silhouette picture for what their ID picture would be.
Like a name badge you might wear, yeah.
So I think it's got good qualities for what it is, especially for $20.
Yeah.
It's a
full MSRP, I believe, is $19.99.
Yeah, it's a great family and party game. So let's talk strategy. One of the biggest things that I've noticed, especially for the clue giver, is so you'll look and you'll see, okay, I think I got 3 that tie together out there, and you'll give a clue, say, movies 3, for instance, which we actually had this happen. And the player that gave the clue didn't realize that the word Hollywood was out there.
For the other team.
For the other team. So the guesser immediately went Hollywood, and that ended his turn.
It was me.
The other team.
I was like, there's no way I could be wrong on this.
Know what the words are out there to make sure you're not given a clue that could be guessed wrong. In that case, it was pretty blatant.
Don't just look at your 8 or 9. You actually have to look at the other teams too, so you don't. Because he thought movies was great. And it was a good clue for those 3 cards, but Hollywood was better than the 3 cards he was thinking
There was actually Hollywood and screen, 2 things that were not...
2 turns in a row, so the next time I'm like, I know what you meant last time. You meant screen, and I was wrong again. I'm like, seriously?
One thing that I could say is the words that you're choosing for your opponent. It would be different if I was teamed up with Brian versus Adam in terms of things that I would say.
Know your teammate, yeah.
Just, if you have, inside jokes or, you follow the same TV shows or things like that.
Sense of humor, that sort of thing plays.
It's knowing your partner and what you can actually say to them versus what's out there. Because I played with Pat, I was like, oh no. Like what
you guys are on 2 different wavelengths.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what to say that he's gonna actually understand,
Which is different. Like Andrew and I have been friends for almost our entire life, so he can give me a clue, and I'm like, okay,
And evidently Adam has a much dirtier mind than me because he gave an awesome clue, but it took me like several rounds. I'm like, oh, that is so filthy.
There was 4 of us at the table, and Brian was the only one not to get it.
I'm pure and good like that. I don't know. So yeah, know your teammates. There's not a lot of strategy because it's wordplay and guessing. I mean, it's just like all those other great party games like Taboo and like Pictionary, and it's along that level.
Yeah, the biggest thing is knowing who you're playing with. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what it comes down to.
So bone up on your pop culture.
Next, we have our likes and dislikes. There's a lot in the box, and they utilize everything well with the double-sided cards and everything, so that there's no wasted space or no wasted components at all, which is nice because that gives you. We keep going back to that price point. You get a lot of bang for your buck.
And I thought for a while, what is great about this is they could do expansions for it. So even if you play it a lot with the party game,
Oh, absolutely.
they could just put out a small box of these extra guessing cards. That's all they'd have to do.
100
with
cards,
no
charge
words.
$10 or whatever. People will buy it.
But I also almost wondered, I don't even know if they need it because there are so many cards and they are double-sided. I mean, I think you'd have to play this a lot.
Well,
And with the same people, you get
the
new people
same
in the mix.
people.
They're gonna think of different clues and see things from a different angle.
and with this,
the different grid.
it's never the same. So even if I just took this and went like this and flipped it,
different game.
now the blue and the red have different clues. So before, I had these 3. Okay, I know that I can have a clue for these 3. Well, now only have this one and then this one. You could just play with the same thing and not even flip them, and it would be a completely different game.
That's a big like for me, is that there's so much in the box and it allows for replayability, and I don't think it would take a lot to get to know it so well that it wouldn't be fun anymore.
Oh yeah.
You'd have to
It's
play
cheap with a lot of good components and a lot of replay.
I like the inclusion of a timer, so if somebody does have analysis paralysis, you can be like, "I'm sorry, dude, I'm going to rush you on this one." And I don't think we've ever really used it. I don't think we've ever actually flipped it. We've just given one little nudge, like, "Come on," and then they get the hint and they move on. But it's there if needed.
Yeah. It's component quality is good, like you said. They went cardboard for the characters. They went double-sided, different artwork for the characters. I don't know if I really have a dislike about it.
And I don't either. I was just going to say, if I had a dislike, the theme's pasted on.
I do have one dislike.
Yeah.
I wish this was bigger.
Maybe make that
A full-size card, maybe, or something bigger. Just because
That's true.
when you're sitting like this,
Because 2 people have to share it.
right, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, and they're trying to count them. Normally, like I said, I hate mini cards. I'm okay with that. I wish this was bigger. But
I can see that.
That's my only complaint. Just so that the squares are a little bit bigger, so you're not, especially like right now, there's no light on this side, so I'm kind
Yeah,
of
the black really blends in with those blues.
blues. Yeah, so I mean, but that's the only thing I can think of. All right, it's time for our reviews. 1 is terrible. Feed it to your dog. 10 is amazing. Go out and buy it for everybody for Christmas. I'm gonna actually go with an 8.5 on this one. It's not quite a 9. Mini cards, tell you what. No, honestly, no. Mini cards isn't. The only thing that doesn't put it at 9 for me is this. If it was bigger and it was easier to read. Otherwise, the gameplay is amazing, and I think a lot of it is to who you play with. If you get your grandma playing with you, it could be a pretty interesting game because, World War II. I'm going to miss a lot of those references.
Talking about Truman's presidency and whatever, but yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's a fun game. Amazing on the price. Card quality is good for what it needs to be. So it's an 8.5 for me.
I'm close. I'm at an 8. And what this suffered for me is I really follow board games and the trade shows closely, and I'm on Board Game Geek way too much, to be honest. And this had so much hype coming out of those when it was first released. I mean, it was just selling out like crazy. Everybody was talking about it. It was like the hotness. And I got it, and it's very good. I'm giving it an 8. But people were talking like it was the second coming of board games, and it's just another party word-based game. It really is. The theme's pasted on. They just give you a lot in the box so that you're never going to run out, and it has a really high player count, which is awesome. That's why I'm keeping, it sounds like a negative thing to say that it's just another word game, but it can play, like it says, anywhere from 2 to, it says 8+. Adam just looked it up on the box. So you could play 20 people and have, 1 clue giver, 9 guessers on each team if you wanted. It's very family friendly. You could play with anybody visiting or whatever, break it out at a party. But when it comes down to it, I don't think it quite deserved the amount of hype. I had my expectations like way up there. I put the bar up a little too high after I started hearing about this game. But it is an 8. It is a very good game, and I'm glad I have it.
I'm going to agree with Andrew. I'm going to give it an 8.5 for a lot of the same reasons you guys have talked about. What maybe keeps it from the 9 or higher is probably the theme, actually, for me. Just like Brian said, it's kind of pasted on. It's just a generic game. But what makes it an 8.5 is you get a lot for your money. It's an easy to pick up and play game, and it's a very simple game that anybody can play. I mean, you can break it out at a party for people that don't normally play board games. It's going to be like Taboo. It's going to be like, those other kind of guessing games where anybody can pick it up and play it. And maybe that's why they went with the theme that they did. It's an easy theme. People aren't going to get caught up in thinking like, Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff. It's
you don't want to do that.
So it's very family friendly, great game, quick play, and solid 8.5.
It's kind of like that old saying, easy to learn, difficult to master, or whatever, because you always want to one-up yourself. It even says, like, if you can get people to guess more than 4 cards in one turn, you're like, what are you, like, cheating at this point? So you can kind of set that goal, like, how many can I get? How fast can we end this?
There was a point Andrew and I were playing where I'm like, I'm going to go for 4, just because, see if Andrew, because we were so far ahead.
Why not?
But no, it's a really fun game, and I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, and as a guesser, you feel really good when you're like, I got 3. Like, you want to reach for that 4. But
and you'd be surprised how rarely that happens. That you get more than 2 cards. It's hard to do.
It is.
Well, that's our review of Codenames. Check back soon for another review.